Okay, so hi, Jasmine, and welcome to our Coaches in Real Life chat. We're going to dive straight in, and we have mentioned the fact that we're going to chat today about your solo 6 month travel journey, which I'm super excited to dive deeper in because a lot of my self-development spiritual journey started with travel, not solo travel at first, but then there's sort of another level deeper for myself with the solo travel. So just before we dive into that, could you perhaps just talk us through some of the pivotal moments in your life that sort of led up to that point, just to give us a bit of an idea about you and where you're at?
Absolutely. So it's great to be here, Abbie, and I thank you for including me on this call. And yeah, this solo trip to Southeast Asia was definitely a pivotal moment for me personally. And gosh, there's just so many lessons learned while I was traveling, as well as residual lessons that popped up afterwards. So I'll kind of walk you through what led me to embark on that trip in the first place. I had been in a relationship, and it was more like a series of relationships without any breaks in between. I just kind of had a habit of jumping in one to the next.
Right.
And this particular relationship that had ended, we had plans to travel internationally together. We had both traveled quite a bit separately, but I had never done a trip by myself for such an extended period of time. So anyway, this relationship ended, and along with the ending of that, ended our plans, obviously, to travel. And this time, instead of immediately searching for another relationship to relieve me of that discomfort, I just wanted to jump across the world. I just wanted to find a way to start fresh, to learn more about myself, to gain more independence. So I chose Southeast Asia. There's so much that called me to that region of the world. One, there was an elephant program there, a volunteer program that I was really excited to get into because those are my favorite animals. I just wanted to hike and backpack and just learn about all these beautiful cultures in that neck of the woods. So that's kind of the backstory of what led me over there. And I want to say that this trip took place, this was 7 years ago now. 7 years.
Okay.
So quite a bit.
Yeah, amazing. And it's really interesting and self-aware, I suppose, to notice that you were saying about often going into a new relationship to relieve discomfort. So this was obviously a time that for some reason you were willing to lean into that a little bit. Did it feel like why do you think that time was the time?
I think this was the time because this was a breakup that was different than a lot of the other breakups. I had always been the caretaker in my past relationships, and in this relationship, this person was very emotionally distant. So I felt like it was more of a rejection when it ended. And so a piece of me was rebellious, well, I'm just going to reinvent myself then and just become this new person. And, to some extent, there was a reinvention or an unearthing of what was beneath. But in a lot of ways, it was just, it was me just shedding a skin and just growing more into myself.
Yeah, I feel you on I feel like at some point on this journey we go through that sort of rebellious phase of, whether it's, you know, triggered by a relationship ending or just what we're realizing about the outside world, or the, you know, experiences that we've been through, either by ourselves or whether it's with other people. So had you done much, like, had you done any solo travel before, or much travel before? Like, was the actual traveling and doing that by yourself, was there any fear in that, or was it just more excitement?
It was definitely a mix of fear and excitement. And I had traveled quite a bit, but mostly with family or friends previously. And I had gone to Europe by myself before that, but I had linked up with people that I knew once I got there. So like there was a bit of, you know, there was a bit of solo, but it was mostly me with people that I knew. And so this trip, there was some fear there because I wasn't going to know anybody. It was going to be, you know, I gave myself at least 6 months to just kind of jump in. I did research, of course, and tried to familiarize myself with places I knew that I would be going to, but I also left a lot up in the air, just to work on, you know, building resilience and being more adaptable. And that's exactly what happened. So I couldn't have asked for a better way to you know, gain some confidence in my abilities to be solo and to be fully reliant on myself.
Yeah, awesome. So there's still the mix of like the fear plus the excitement, and like talk us through the very start of that journey and your feelings, like the night before, the first days. Like, did it just, everything like sort of dissipated and you knew you'd be fine from a certain point, or how did that play out?
That's a good question. I think there was a bit of a moment starting out when I was kind of like, what am I doing? I had a wonderful like home and roommate situation and so many friends that I was going to leave behind. And it was probably the first time I realized that I'm not necessarily running from home to get away. Like I'm planning to come back to my home, and I love my home. So this isn't necessarily an escape. So I think that relieved a little bit of the fear. It's like it took some of the pressure off for me to completely start over. It's like you can always come home. I gave myself that permission. But once I got there, I'd say that the first couple of days were a little bit overwhelming. I had just turned 25, like the day that I had gotten there. And so I was like tired and, you know, kind of wished that I had loved ones around, but I soon became really accustomed to being alone and really found enjoyment in it. Whereas before I thought like that was going to be the hardest part, was being alone and not being able to reach out to supports whenever I felt lonely.
Yeah.
So that was really cool to grow into that feeling of independence and really enjoying my own company throughout it.
Yeah, I can really relate to that one, like in this like the solo travel days, and also what you said about travel as like an escape. I think I've definitely realized that in myself. There's like an element of, I'm actually at home now for the longest period since starting to travel, like 5 years ago. And I think previously there's always been this like, okay, but I need to go back again somewhere soon, or like I lose that travel, that part of my identity, like I'm a traveler and I'm and this. But yeah, it's interesting that you could just allow yourself to, this trip could be what it was because you're actually good with going home at the end of it, and you've kind of, you can almost then, I guess, let yourself experience it to the max more, would you say?
I'd say so, yeah, because there wasn't that dread of like, oh no, I have to go home after this and I don't want to go home. There was a bit of that. There was a little bit of sadness for the adventures to be over. But again, just reminding myself, well, you love being home. Like you have I was living in Tucson, Arizona at the time.
Right.
Wonderful city. And yeah, just reminding myself, like, you love being home and you can always travel again. Like you made this happen with not that many resources that you like pulled together. Like it's gonna happen again in the future. You can do this. So but yeah, I definitely empathize with what you said about like not wanting to lose that as part of your identity once you come home, like losing the travel urge.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's really weird. But then actually I think, like you say, you can come to this point of like freedom and like more of a home within yourself, I suppose, where actually you can be home and know that you can travel at any time, but not necessarily need to exercise your right to do that at all times. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I was definitely trying to find that balance of, or just trying to really get clear and honest with myself about my intentions for doing the things I was doing. Because I had such a pattern again of like running, trying to escape, relieve myself of discomfort by focusing on the next thing. And I didn't want this trip to be that. I wanted it to be, I wanted it to be more, I wanted it to be something that was going to have like a long lasting impression, not something to just kind of not something that was going to save me necessarily.
That's an interesting reflection. Yeah, I can feel that. And do you want to just talk us through then some of the, however it felt for you, whether it felt like pivotal moments as you were living it, or whether it's more of a reflection that, or there's perhaps these stages in my journey or these lessons. Like let's start to dig into some of those. I'd love to hear that as well.
Yeah. So I was not, and I don't think most of us are, I was not prepared for some of the messiness and like the pain that comes along with us being confronted by ourselves sometimes when change is happening. So I'll back up a little bit. I believe that most of us, myself included, we have a tendency to construct our identity based on our surrounding environment. So like based on the people that are around us, based on where we live and the stuff that we have. And when I got out there to Southeast Asia, I didn't have any familiar supports to lean on or like comforts to hide myself in. All I had was a backpack strangers all around me, language barriers, foreign land, didn't know where I was. So I was really confronted with myself in new ways. And some of that was scary. And I had kind of hoped that once I got there, it would just be like this clean cut where I became this like impenetrable goddess, but it wasn't necessarily that. Don't get me wrong, it was exhilarating, it was hilarious, it was incredible, but it was also a bit harrowing at times. And I had mentioned that a lot of my past had patterns of codependency. And so I was really confronted on this trip with like the layers of me that contribute to those behaviors of codependency. So I was realizing in Asia just like how much of a people pleaser I was, for example, and how much I would shrink in the presence of others that I felt intimidated by. And also like tried to mask my feelings a lot, to portray myself the way that I hoped other people would want to see me. And there was also like a lot of pressure there as an American to like represent Americans in a positive way, because let's face it, we kind of have a bad rap traveling internationally. So that was like another pressure that I held on to, probably unnecessarily. But yeah, being confronted with these different traits in myself did bring some shame and a determination to grow out of it. So as I continued on in my travels, I did become more confident, just simply because I was doing all of the things that I wanted to do that I hadn't done before, and a lot of things that I hadn't imagined that I would be doing. So yeah, a lot of those unfavorable traits, I wouldn't say they're completely erased, they're so deeply ingrained, but they were definitely brought to my awareness in new ways. And so that really helped me begin the work.
Yeah, so like you're saying, like the human element to things, and I really appreciate you for sharing that, because the Insta travel life looks great because the pictures are sunny, and there's we can post the elephants and the Thai temples and all the things, and it looks like a super healing, amazing environment, which it may well have been, but that doesn't always match up to how we're feeling in our internal world, especially when we're just starting to discover so much about ourselves. Was there anything, like, as you realize these different things come up, are you just still on the journey exploring and just becoming aware of what's happening? Do you dive into any particular self-care tools or spiritual practices or anything like this, or is it more just continuing on that travel journey and seeing what life gives you as the sort of spiritual practice?
That's a really good question. And I think that my behaviors changed during different phases of the trip. So when I first started out, my tendency was to do, like you said, just like post the happy stuff on social media and like just kind of mask through it and keep going. Sorry, my cat just busted in and she's very vocal.
No worries, we love a cat.
But then as I continued I realized that wasn't really serving me. Like, you can't just fake your way through through these phases in life. So I did get, I always had a yoga practice. Well, not always, but prior to the trip, I'd had a yoga practice, but got a little bit more, I leaned into that more on the trip, and finding more ways to be mindful and appreciative of the external instead of like hiding so much internally. So I did a lot of journaling. That's great for my self-care. And it's been interesting, like earlier this year, I went back and read through the journal and was just really surprised and and also excited for myself, for like what was to come ahead that I hadn't been aware of at the time. So yeah, I definitely utilize more self-care later on in the trip, as I continue to grow and learn and be around inspirational people that I met along the way. So that was something else that really helped with loneliness, because traveling alone gave me the ability to kind of choose when I wanted company and when I wanted to just do my own thing. And that was something really special. Because prior to that, like I said, I'd travel with other people, and there's always like compromises that you have to make, and maybe things that you miss out on for everyone else's, So yeah, in this instance, I was able to make all the decisions on my own and didn't have to cling to other people for guidance, which was my pattern. It was all up to me. So that was really helpful after the trip, because I would kind of tap into that. Well, if you could, make all of these kinds of decisions on your own, then there's nothing you can't decide for yourself once you get home.
Yeah, so the reflections of like, well, I've done this, for some time now. I've built up this evidence that I can be a decisive person. I can lead my life and, lead it successfully and, go after my desires along the way, and nothing bad happened, or and look at what I got from it, and all of the lessons that happened there. So like, yeah, keeping that part of things up for sure once you're back home, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And was there any other like stories or experiences that stand out on the trip as like a particular person you met, or a night you had, or a realization that you sort of can remember like along the way that you wanted to share?
Yeah. So I had mentioned earlier that I had a tendency to shrink in the presence of, people that I felt intimidated by, and just kind of this nagging self-doubt that I think a lot of us carry with us, but that show up in different ways for different people. And so I had been in Vietnam for about a month, and had like kind of crossed paths with another young lady, and thought she was like interesting from afar, but just kind of figured that we probably won't mesh. She probably won't be interested in like hanging out or whatever. And so just I ended up seeing her again in another town, and stayed in my shell, and she noticed me and was like, "Hey, I saw you in Not Trying," and we just ended up like clicking instantly. And she's a Swedish girl, and we just had so much fun together. We traveled around to several different places in Vietnam. So we probably spent about 2 weeks together. And she really like emanated just someone who's uninhibited, has her heart on her sleeve, like really just lets her joy and passion like emanate from her. And so I loved that. I loved being around that. I'm just so glad that she like helped pull me out of my shell in those moments when I was feeling a little bit insecure. So that was probably, I would definitely say that was a pivotal moment, because after, she went back home to Sweden and I kept traveling in Asia, and it was a good reminder that you don't have to stay in your shell. People are perfectly happy to connect with you if you're open to it. So it really helped me step out of my reserved American ways and just be more open to things and not be scared to like get silly. And if I'm feeling ecstatic, like show that. I don't have to keep it all inside.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds like such a wholesome like relationship to have invested in. And even though it was probably what like just really 2 weeks together, was that like the entirety? It's just amazing, isn't it, how we can form such deep connections so quickly when I think, number one, we've gone on that journey of finding ourselves and being ourselves more, and then number two, just something in us that allows us to be open to an experience like that, and to open up a little more when we feel like a bit of safety to do so, or a little prompt just to, I feel good energy around this person, I can share a bit more, actually they bring out things in me, and sort of mirror things, don't they, on the on the right part of the journey. That sounds amazing. Are you still in touch with her now, by the way?
Yeah, we still are in touch from time to time, and I can't wait to go to Sweden someday to see her. We've talked about like linking up in South America perhaps, so I know we'll see each other again. And you're so right, like those relationships that you make when you're traveling abroad are so special, because I feel like when people commit themselves to trips like that, it's because they're going through or have gone through like something pretty significant in their lives. And so in the travel, like you're just building all of these memories together, and it's like it's just magnetic, how the universe can put certain people in your path.
Absolutely. I felt like, I think what I kind of worked out as time went on in my solo travel is that there's one part that is that there's so many people that you can meet and do meet every single day, that you don't have to try and force these like deeper relationships with everyone, and you can just sink into the, what do I need to do today? Do I really just need a day to myself? Like I've spent some time in like party hostel, like quiet party hostels in Mexico, being so like inwards, which just seems crazy. And but then knowing that actually at the right moments and the right days, if you still have that openness and you're not completely closed off, then sometimes it's just, a few more words deeper than hi, how are you, and you're like, oh, okay, there's more to this.
yeah I think it's really important to be aware of what your needs are socially, like giving yourself a break when you need a break, when you need some like time for inward reflection, but also giving yourself like a healthy push out of that comfort zone too, like obviously not forcing yourself into like nonstop interactions if that's something that would be harmful in the moment, but yeah, finding that balance between encouraging yourself to step outside of the comfort zone while still respecting what you need.
Yeah, definitely the balance. And how are you reflecting on like relationships at this point? Because you'd said about like sort of going straight into a new relationship. Were you really just like, okay, this is just about me, more about friendships and connections? Was there any part of you that wanted to find someone whilst you were out there, or was that not sort of part of the journey?
Yeah, I was not interested in finding anything serious at all. I just wanted to have fun and be free, and I was not thinking about my next relationship in the slightest. And actually I ended up being single for 3 or 4 years after that last relationship had ended, and that had never happened for me in my whole adult life. So that was the start of me being more selective with those I kept close to me.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. And again, before we go to like reflections afterwards, was there any other things that that stand out that you wanted to share from the trip itself, like moments in certain countries, or just any reflections you had in any area of life?
There's so many moments. Oh my goodness.
Give us some more, we got time.
Oh, where to begin? I want to say that I think traveling around Indonesia was that taught me a lot about certain aspects of myself that I was certainly not ready to face. And I'm trying to choose my words carefully here. It was definitely trickier to travel around Indonesia and not get there were a lot of opportunities there for tourists to be like financially taken advantage of, or like, stuff like that. And I found myself at a point where it just kept happening in like all of these creative ways that, that like, I don't know, I would book a trip and it ended up not being a real trip, and buying a bag of fruit and then the fruit bag was like filled with all of this other stuff, like that kind of thing that like it's not important now at all. But in the time it was like it was just so devastating to me. And I found myself getting angry, and for, I'd say, like at least a week, I let that really like cloud my experience of things. And I had to take a step back and like remind myself, look at where you are, look at like what a blessing it is to like be on this beach. Who cares that you don't get to like go snorkeling over here today because it, it didn't work out. You can go again. Like, you don't have to be home at any certain time. Like, you're blessed with the resources to really just enjoy this land so much, and the people, and really making an effort not to let those negative experiences like have a negative impact on how I see people or how I interact with people. And I never wanted to be that like uptight American who has to like have everything done a certain way. And I didn't think that I was, but in those moments I was kind of realizing, oh, this isn't who you want to be. So let's work on let's work on letting some shit go. So that was yeah, kind of a long-winded version or a long-winded way to get to that conclusion of I needed to learn how to let things go, and that's what happened. So
Yeah.
I'm grateful that not everything turned out the way that I had wanted it to.
I love your reflection on that, because I feel like these are the things that we probably don't talk about that much with travel, like, either things that challenge our safety or security, or things that are cultural differences, or things that actually, like you say, when you're willing to, we can actually just look within and think about, what is this trying to reflect to us, and what you're taking from that scenario is like, I'm just going to let go, of outcomes or whatever it might be, and realize that I can just believe that everything's happening for a reason, and I don't need to attach myself to that or let that cloud the rest of the trip, which would be so easy to do. You go into like, okay, I'm back in inward mode again, like I shared too much, or I gave too much, and now I feel like maybe that was taken advantage of in some way, or I can feel like something was done to me. But it seems like you really use that for your development, and actually as a more powerful lesson than a negative point on your trip.
Definitely I think we all have a choice in any moment, if we want to find the lesson in this shitty situation, or if we're just going to let it take all of our power from us. And I was tired of giving my power away, and there was obviously room for growth surrounding these incidents, and I had to choose to grow from it and to find a way to learn. And that's something that I think, we never stop learning, we never stop growing. If we do, we're in trouble. But it became more of a priority to me starting then and onward to let go.
And so how do you feel when you're coming towards the end of the trip? Because you said like going, you're sort of quite happy that you got home to come back to, and things like that. How did it feel when you were getting, towards the end? Did you feel the same? Did you feel a pull to stay or want to keep traveling somewhere else? How did that feel?
Yeah, I felt pulled in so many different directions. On the one hand, I felt excited to get back to my friends and my dog. My roommate had been keeping my dog for 6 months. Really missed him. But I also realized, I mean, I knew already I didn't want my life to be in this 9 to 5 job forever. Like, I did not want that conventional lifestyle for myself. And so towards the end of the trip was just kind of brainstorming ways to keep travel alive in the future. Towards the end of the trip, though, I was totally broke. So it wasn't something I could really plan for right then and there, but I wanted to always remember the importance of giving myself these experiences and, getting creative to find ways to make it happen again in the future. So yeah, there was a mix between eagerness to return to home and loved ones, but also wanting to keep adventuring. And I think that's an ongoing conflict, being wanting, the stability and familiarity of home, but also wanting to have adventures and explore and have variety and grow from the unfamiliarity.
Yeah, that's interesting. And when you got home, was that like, did it take you, I suppose what I was going to ask is like, did you then sort of go through a period of adjusting back to normal life, and or were you more like going back to create something new at home? Like, how did that look?
Oh, it was such an adjustment coming home. I thought on the one hand, oh, it'll be so nice to not sleep in hostels anymore and to like have a bed and a room to myself. But I found coming home that it was hard to be alone after, there was a lot of time spent alone in the travels, but pretty much every night I was coming home to a hostel and there was like other people. I went to bed knowing that there were other people around me, and coming home there wasn't that. And so
then it's suddenly weird, like not to sleep around 10 other people.
Exactly. It's like, it's so quiet and there's no other bodies nearby. So that was really an unexpected adjustment. And then, yeah, just kind of jumping back into America was difficult. I've never been a punctual person, and punctuality is non-existent in Southeast Asia. So like coming back to a culture where like you need to be somewhere at a certain time and like engage in the mundane things like the morning commute and that kind of stuff was hard to adjust back to for a while.
Yeah, I felt similar, definitely. I think each trip a little, there's definitely this sort of adjustment period of like coming home again as a newer version of yourself, and you might think that, oh yeah, I'm going to bring this flow back to where I am, I'm going to bring this like my new realizations about myself, but then in reality it's hard to be confronted with the old environment and maybe the old beliefs of people or the negativity around you, and you didn't have all the like-minded travelers or things like that. So it sounds like you definitely felt that. So
yeah, trying to like retain that zest for life and that like beginner's mind that I had traveling, trying to retain that back in my old surroundings was a challenge. So yeah, I had to find ways to nurture that side of myself without jumping across the world again. So being sure to like take trips and play and just not lose that part of myself that I had tapped into was important.
That's so good. Yeah, I talk about that a lot, you know, feeling how you want to feel, or like we think that freedom often means traveling or being somewhere else, but how can we get more of that into our lives now? And like you say, getting some of those elements that you loved, you can bring that into life now. We just think we can only do certain things or express a certain part of ourselves when we're traveling or when we're elsewhere. But I think the gift or the challenge is really how do we fulfill all of ourselves when we're in whatever environment we're in, be it home or somewhere we have to stay for a long time, which might not be our ideal place. Yeah, it's super interesting that you found that too. And just to like fast forward then, because obviously that was a while ago now, but have you since that gone on any more solo travel, or do you travel about now? Are you still home where you were back then? Like what did life then turn into?
Oh, I kept traveling, but not solo for such an extended period of time. I did spend with my now husband, we spent 6 months living and traveling in Mexico.
Wow.
This was like we started right before the pandemic hit. And then the pandemic kind of ruined some of those plans. We had to stay down there a lot longer. So we ended up coming back from Mexico, and we had been living in Tucson before that. But after Mexico, we moved to New Mexico, and that's where I am currently. So yeah, done some travel to like Belize, and again, like all around Mexico and around the States. Hopefully South America next, more of South America to come.
Yeah, you're still keeping the travel plans alive. I love that. I love that. Even though maybe there's a few more compromises now with someone else along with you.
Right. And like now I have like a farm to take care of. And so it's a little more complicated to like pack up and just go, but still priority. So
oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for just really opening up and sharing with us the whole spectrum of the travel emotions. Like I feel like I could definitely relate to a lot of those different things, and yet don't always talk about those parts of my travel experiences, because a lot of people tend to just go, oh, you traveled, wow, that must have been amazing, it looked great, you must have been so much fun. One thing that I do that I have just been ending on in these chats is because we are coaches, and now you are an empowerment coach serving codependent young adults, which sounds awesome. And we're having in real life chats. I just wondered if there was something that you could share with us that is like super present, perhaps a bit vulnerable, that you're working on at the moment in your self-development journey.
I love that question. And the first thing that comes to mind is the importance of acceptance and allowing people to behave and think and say what they will without being so emotionally invested in it. And so I think that our tendency to really want to be able to control what everyone else is doing, how everyone else is reacting to us, can really be damaging and bring a lot of pain and stress into our emotional state, into our relationships. And if we can find ways in the moment to just kind of release it and, you know, give people the permission to do as they will, then we can find a lot of freedom in that.
Do you feel like that's more difficult since becoming a coach? Because I feel like from what you're saying, I can kind of relate to like wanting people, like really wanting things for people that maybe I've learned for myself or done for myself, and then wanting that for others. But you know, you have to sort of realize that they will either get to that part of their journey, or just like you say, loving and accepting people for who they are right now.
It is really difficult, and I think with my background in social work, it's really prepped me for that. Prepped me for coaching, because, you know, I kind of went into the field of social work with like my cape on, and I'm going to save everybody, and people just need to like listen to all of this awesome advice that I have, and things will go well for them. And quickly learned that that's not the case. And if I was going to be so attached to their outcomes and have such high expectations for people, it really was going to damage the dynamic. And the same is true with coaching. You have to trust that people have their own inner resources to tap into, and people will ultimately find their way, whether or not they arrive to the place you want them to or not. They might need to learn lessons the harder way, the longer way, before they get to where they're going to be. And it's important to just step back and allow that to happen. You know, offer them as much support and guidance as you can, while also giving them the room and space to fall down and make mistakes. That's part of learning and part of growing.
I think that is a super inspiring point just to land on. So thank you for opening up to share with us that that's something that's like on your mind and present for you at the moment. Jasmine, thank you so much for this chat. I've loved finding out more about you, having this deeper connection. It's exactly what these chats are all about, and I can't wait to keep following your journey.
Yes, thank you so much, Abbie. This was fun. Not only fun to like reminisce on the travels, but just super fun to connect with you and have the opportunity to have coaching in real life conversations. I think that's so important. So I appreciate your time and willingness to chat.
You are so welcome. Thank you. Take care of yourself, and I will chat with you soon, no doubt.
All right. Have a great rest of your day.
Cheers, you too. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.